The drawing was dated 3 months ago. A woman with dark skin and braided hair, standing in their living room, holding Ji-yeon's hand. Min-wook stared at it now, pinned to the refrigerator, as footsteps echoed in his penthouse. He grabbed his gun from the drawer and moved silently toward the sound. She was standing in his living room, dripping rainwater onto his marble floor, her braids pulled back, exhaustion carved into her beautiful face. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then his gun came up. "Who the hell are you?" Her hands shot up, eyes wide with terror. "I live here. Apartment 38B, I just moved in today, I swear. This is the 38th floor." His voice was ice. Her face drained of color. She looked at her key, then at the door number behind her. No, I pressed 3. The elevator, it was glitching, the lights were. Her accent was thick, Nigerian, panicked. "Please, I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm a doctor. I work at Asen Medical Center. This is just a mistake." "Appa, don't hurt her." Min-wook's daughter appeared in the hallway, barefoot in her pink pajamas, clutching the drawing she'd made 3 months ago. Ji-yeon hadn't spoken in 18 months, not since her mother died. She communicated only through drawings and written notes. But now she walked straight to the terrified stranger and held up the picture. The resemblance was impossible. Exact. "Sumina, go back to bed." Min-wook's voice softened, but his gun didn't lower. Ji-yeon shook her head and wrote quickly on her notepad, holding it up. "She's the one from my dreams. She brings the light back." The woman, Eseosa, stared at the drawing, then at the little girl, then at Min-wook. "What is this? What's happening?" Min-wook lowered his gun slowly, his mind racing. His daughter's drawings had been disturbingly accurate before. She'd drawn her mother's accident 2 days before it happened. He'd dismissed it as coincidence then. He couldn't dismiss this. "There's a burst pipe in the 3rd floor unit," he said finally, holstering his weapon. "Building manager called an hour ago. You can stay in the guest room tonight." "I'm sorry, what?" "My daughter doesn't lie." He looked at Ji-yeon, who was smiling for the first time in months. "If she says you're supposed to be here, then you stay. Before you find out what happens next, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now. This story is about to take you on a journey you won't forget, and trust me, you'll want to be here for every twist. Now, let's continue." Eseosa found herself in a guest room that was bigger than her entire apartment in Lagos. The sheets smelled like expensive detergent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Seoul glittered below her like a circuit board. She should have been terrified. A man with a gun had just offered her shelter based on his mute daughter's prophetic drawing. This was insane. But something about Ji-yeon's eyes had stopped her from running. The child had looked at her like she was water in a desert. She couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., her door cracked open. Ji-yeon slipped inside, clutching a sketchbook. "Sweetheart, you should be asleep," Eseosa whispered, sitting up. Ji-yeon climbed onto the bed and opened her sketchbook. Page after page of drawings. Eseosa in the kitchen. Eseosa reading to Ji-yeon. Eseosa and Min-wook standing close, his hand on her face. All dated weeks or months in the past. "How long have you been drawing me?" Eseosa asked softly. Ji-yeon wrote, "Since Ioma died. You were always coming. I just had to wait." Eseosa's throat tightened. "Baby, I'm just here because of a mistake." Ji-yeon shook her head firmly and wrote again, "No mistakes. Only fate." Footsteps in the hall. Min-wook appeared in the doorway, and Eseosa's breath caught. Without the gun, without the cold mask, he looked different. Tired. Heartbroken. Human. "Ji-yeona, you need to sleep," he said gently. The little girl hopped off the bed, kissed Eseosa's cheek impulsively, and skipped past her father. Min-wook lingered in the doorway. "I'm sorry about earlier. The gun. I have enemies." "What kind of enemies?" Eseosa asked, already knowing she didn't want the answer. The kind that don't knock. He paused. The building manager said your apartment won't be ready for 5 days. You're welcome to stay. Why would you let a stranger stay in your home? Because my daughter hasn't smiled in 18 months. His voice cracked slightly. And she smiled when she saw you. Their eyes met across the dim room. Something electric passed between them, something neither of them was ready to name. 5 days, Eseosa said. Then I'm gone. 5 days, he agreed. But they both knew it was a lie. The next morning, Eseosa woke to the smell of coffee and something burning. She found Ji-yeon in the kitchen, attempting to make breakfast. Flour everywhere. Min-wook was already gone. Does your dad always leave this early? Ji-yeon wrote. Business. He doesn't talk about it. They made pancakes together, or tried to. Ji-yeon laughed silently when Eseosa flipped one onto the floor. The sound of her laughter, even without voice, filled something hollow in Eseosa's chest. She'd left Lagos to escape her ex-boyfriend's fists. She'd come to Seoul to disappear. She hadn't expected to find a little girl who looked at her like she was magic. Min-wook came home at 3 p.m. with blood on his knuckles. Eseosa was reading to Ji-yeon on the couch when he walked in. He tried to hide his hands, but she'd seen too much trauma not to notice. Ji-yeon, go draw in your room for a bit, Eseosa said gently. The girl obeyed, sensing the tension. When they were alone, Eseosa stood and crossed to Min-wook. Let me see your hands. It's nothing. I'm a trauma surgeon. Let me see. He hesitated, then held them out. His knuckles were split, bruising already forming. She led him to the kitchen, ran warm water, cleaned the wounds with gentle efficiency. He watched her face the entire time, not his hands. You're going to tell me this is from the gym, she said quietly. Would you believe me? No. Then why ask? His voice was rough, but not unkind. She wrapped his knuckles in gauze. Because I want to know if you'll lie to me. I've never lied to anyone I cared about. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. He cared about her. After 1 day. Eseosa's hands stilled on his. You don't know me. My daughter drew you for 3 months. I feel like I've known you my whole life. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. Tell me you don't feel it too. She did. God help her, she did. This stranger with dangerous hands and sad eyes who let his prophetic daughter dictate his choices. She should run. She should grab her bags and never look back. Instead, she squeezed his hand. 5 days. 5 days, he whispered, and this time it sounded like a prayer. That night, Min-wook made dinner. Real dinner, not takeout. Kimchi jjigae, perfectly seasoned. They ate together, the 3 of them, and it felt like family. Ji-yeon kept looking between them, smiling in that knowing way that made Eseosa's skin prickle. After dinner, Min-wook's phone buzzed. His face went hard. I have to go out. At 9 p.m.? Eseosa asked. Business doesn't keep office hours. He kissed Ji-yeon's head. Be good for Eseosa. Where are you going? Eseosa pressed. He looked at her for a long moment. Somewhere you can't follow. After he left, Eseosa couldn't settle. She put Ji-yeon to bed, read her 3 stories, waited until the girl's breathing evened out. Then she made a choice she'd regret. She grabbed her coat and followed him. The taxi driver didn't ask questions when she said, Itaewon, and showed him a screenshot of Min-wook's location from the Find My Friends app Ji-yeon had sneakily set up on both their phones. They pulled up outside a building with no sign, just a red door and 2 men in black suits standing guard. Eseosa watched from across the street as Min-wook entered. She waited 5 minutes, then approached. Members only, one guard said in English. I'm looking for Min-wook. Tell him Eseosa is here. The guards exchanged glances. One spoke into his radio. A moment later, the door opened, and she was ushered inside. The underground gambling den was exactly what she'd feared. Smoke hung thick in the air. Men in expensive suits crowded around tables. The sound of chips and cards and money-changing hands filled the space. And in the back room, visible through a window, Minwook stood over a man on his knees, blood streaming from the man's nose. Eseosa's stomach turned. Minwook said something in Korean, sharp and final. The man nodded frantically. Then Minwook turned and saw her through the glass. His face went white. She didn't wait. She turned and ran, pushing through the crowd, bursting onto the street. She heard him calling her name, but she didn't stop. She flagged a taxi and gave the driver the address, her whole body shaking. By the time Minwook got home, she had her bags packed. Eseosa, please. Don't. She didn't look at him. I left violence in Lagos. I'm not going to walk into it here. That man owed money to people who would have killed his family. I was giving him more time. By beating him. By scaring him enough that the people above me would back off. His voice rose, then dropped. You think I want this life? You think I enjoy it? Then why are you in it? Because you don't just leave. He grabbed her shoulders, desperate. My wife tried to leave. She found evidence, thought she could go to the police. They killed her, Eseosa. They killed her and made it look like an accident, and I couldn't prove anything, and my daughter stopped speaking because she watched her mother's car go off a bridge. Eseosa's anger faltered. Minwook. I'm trying to get out. I've been trying for 2 years. But I have to do it carefully, or they'll kill Jiyeon too. Tears streaked his face. She's all I have left. I can't lose her. Eseosa's resolve cracked. She reached up and wiped his tears with her thumbs. Then let me help you. I can't ask you to do that. You're not asking. I'm offering. She pulled him closer. But no more secrets. If we're doing this, you tell me everything. Everything, he promised. Then he kissed her. Desperate and hungry and full of 2 years of grief and loneliness. She kissed him back just as hard, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him impossibly closer. They stumbled backward until her back hit the wall, his body pressed against hers, and for a moment the world narrowed to just this. His mouth on hers, his hands in her hair, the sound of their breathing mixing together. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm falling for you, he whispered. I know it's crazy. I know it's too fast. But Jiyeon was right. You're the one. I'm scared, Eseosa admitted. Me too. He kissed her again, softer this time. Stay. Please stay. She stayed. The next 3 weeks were the strangest of Eseosa's life. By day, she worked 12-hour shifts at the hospital, saving lives in the trauma unit. By night, she came home to Minwook and Jiyeon, and they played at being a normal family. Minwook taught her Korean curse words while they cooked dinner. Jiyeon started humming around the apartment, small sounds that made Minwook's eyes shine with hope. Eseosa braided Jiyeon's hair in intricate patterns that made the little girl squeal silently with delight. They watched movies together, the 3 of them squeezed onto the couch. Minwook's arm around Eseosa's shoulders felt like it had always belonged there. But at night, after Jiyeon was asleep, Minwook would get calls. He'd disappear for hours. He always came back with something broken, knuckles or ribs, or once, a cut above his eye that Eseosa stitched up at the kitchen table while he drank whiskey and tried not to flinch. Tell me about your plan, she said one night, threading the needle through his skin. How do you get out? I've been moving money. Legitimate investments. Offshore accounts my bosses don't know about. I have enough now to disappear, but I need to transfer operations first. Find someone to take over who won't come after us. How long? 6 months. Maybe less. He caught her hand. Will you wait that long? I'll wait as long as it takes. She tied off the stitch and kissed the corner of his mouth. But you have to promise me something. Anything. When this is over, you walk away completely. No looking back. No unfinished business. We start clean. I promise. He pulled her into his lap, buried his face in her neck. I love you, Eseosa Williams. I know I shouldn't say it yet, but I do. I love you. Her heart stuttered. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. They made love that night for the first time, slow and careful, learning each other's bodies like sacred texts. He traced every scar on her skin from her ex's rage, kissed each one like an apology for violence she'd survived. She mapped the bullet wound on his shoulder, the knife scar on his ribs, the rope burns on his wrists from the time he'd been kidnapped 3 years ago. They were both so broken, but together they felt almost whole. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Eseosa felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. It didn't last. Mrs. Kong, Min Wook's mother-in-law, showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning. Eseosa was making breakfast in one of Min Wook's shirts, her hair wild, clearly having spent the night. The older woman took one look at her and started speaking rapid, angry Korean. "Iamoni, please." Min Wook tried to intervene. "Don't you dare." Mrs. Kong switched to English, her accent thick. "My daughter is barely cold in the ground and you bring this woman into my granddaughter's home?" "Mrs. Kong, I understand you're upset," Eseosa started. "You understand nothing." The older woman's eyes blazed. "You come here, you seduce him. You play house with my Jiyeon like you have any right." "She has every right," Min Wook said firmly. "Jiyeon loves her. I love her. And Soo Yun would have wanted me to be happy. How dare you speak for my daughter?" Mrs. Kang's voice broke. Then she saw Jiyeon standing in the hallway, watching everything, tears streaming down her silent face. The older woman's anger crumbled. She went to her granddaughter, knelt down, spoke softly in Korean. Jiyeon shook her head and ran to Eseosa instead, wrapping her arms around her waist. "I'm sorry," Eseosa said to Mrs. Kong. "I never meant to cause pain. But I'm not going anywhere. Jiyeon needs me. Min Wook needs me. And I need them too." Mrs. Kong looked at her granddaughter clinging to this stranger, and something shifted in her expression. Resignation, maybe. Or the beginning of acceptance. "5 minutes," she said to Min Wook in English. "I need 5 minutes alone with her." Min Wook looked at Eseosa, who nodded. He took Jiyeon gently. "Come on, baby. Let's go draw." When they were alone, Mrs. Kong studied Eseosa with sharp eyes. "My daughter drew pictures too. Did he tell you that?" "No. She drew her death 3 days before it happened. A car, water, darkness." The older woman's voice was steady, but her hands shook. "I thought she was being dramatic. She was always so artistic, so emotional. I didn't believe her." Eseosa's chest tightened. "I'm so sorry. Jiyeon has the same gift. Stronger." Mrs. Kong pulled out her phone, showed Eseosa a photo. Jiyeon's drawing of Eseosa, dated 4 months ago. "She showed this to me and said, Appa's new Iyama is coming soon." I thought she was confused, grieving. But she was right. "I'm not trying to replace your daughter." "I know." Mrs. Kang's eyes softened slightly. "But my granddaughter chose you. And Jiyeon's drawings never lie." She paused. "He's in danger. You know that, yes? The life he lives." "I know. We're working on leaving it." "Good. Because if anything happens to him, Jiyeon only has me. And now I think she has you too." Mrs. Kong stood. "Don't break her heart. Either of their hearts. They've been broken enough." "I won't. I promise." The older woman left without another word. Min Wook found Eseosa still standing in the kitchen, shaking. "Are you okay?" He wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Your mother-in-law just gave me permission to love you." "She did." He sounded surprised. "In her own terrifying way, yes." Eseosa turned in his arms. "Min Wook, we need to move faster. Get out sooner. I have a bad feeling. About what? I don't know. But Ji-yeon's been drawing again. Dark things. Men in masks. A van. Her voice dropped. Blood. His face went pale. Show me. They found Ji-yeon in her room, surrounded by new drawings. All dated 1 week from today. A black van. Men with covered faces. Ji-yeon screaming silently. And at the bottom of one page, written in her careful handwriting, "They're coming for me." Min-wook grabbed his phone immediately, called Sang-hoon. "I need extra security on Ji-yeon. Now. I don't care what it costs. Pull men from everywhere else, I want." Appa. Ji-yeon tugged his sleeve. He knelt down. "What is it, baby?" She handed him another drawing. This one showed Eseosa crying, holding Ji-yeon. And in the background, barely visible, Min-wook lying on the ground. "No," Min-wook breathed. "No, that's not going to happen." But Ji-yeon's drawings never lied. For the next week, Min-wook barely slept. He hired 4 bodyguards to shadow Ji-yeon everywhere. He moved them to a safe house. He accelerated his exit strategy, meeting with potential successors, liquidating assets faster than was safe. Eseosa watched him unravel, helpless. She held him at night when the nightmares came, when he'd wake up gasping, convinced he'd lost everything. She reminded him to eat, to breathe, to remember that fear couldn't protect them, only smart choices could. "Maybe we should just run," she suggested one night. "Tonight. Take Ji-yeon and disappear. They'd find us. And they'd make an example of us." He pulled her closer. "I have to do this right. Just a few more days." Those few days felt like walking on a knife's edge. Then, on a Tuesday morning, it happened. Eseosa was at the hospital when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Dr. Williams?" A woman's voice. "The housekeeper." "They took Ji-yeon." The world stopped. "What?" "At school pickup. Black van. 3 men in masks. They knocked me down, they just took her, I couldn't." The woman was sobbing. Eseosa was already running. She grabbed her coat, told her supervisor it was a family emergency, and sprinted to the parking garage. Her hands shook so badly she could barely start her car. She called Min-wook. "They have her." His voice was dead. Hollow. "They called. They want 5 billion won by midnight or they kill her." "Where are you?" "Safe house in Gangnam." "Eseosa, you don't need to. I'm already on my way." She hung up and drove like her life depended on it. Because Ji-yeon's life did depend on it. That little girl who'd drawn her into existence, who'd chosen her, who'd brought light back into all their lives. She found Min-wook surrounded by maps and laptops, Sang-hoon and 3 other men coordinating search efforts. He looked up when she entered, and the grief in his eyes nearly broke her. "We can't find her. No cameras caught the van. No witnesses. They're professionals." His voice cracked. "I'm going to lose her, just like I lost Soo-yeon." Eseosa crossed to him, grabbed his face in both hands. "No, you're not. Because I know where she is." Everyone turned to stare at her. "The medical alert bracelet," Eseosa said quickly. "The one I gave her 3 weeks ago. Remember? When she fell at the playground and I was worried about her head injury. It has GPS tracking." Min-wook's eyes widened. "You put a tracker on my daughter?" "I put a safety device on a child in a dangerous situation, yes." She was already pulling up the app on her phone. And right now, it says she's in Bucheon, an industrial area near the airport. Sang-hoon was already moving. "I know that area. Abandoned warehouses. We can be there in 20 minutes. "Call the police," Eseosa said. "No police," Min-wook snapped. "They said no police or she dies." "Then you go in and I call them. They'll be backup, not lead." She grabbed his arm. "Min-wook, you can't go in there and commit murder. Even if you save her, you'll go to prison. And then what? She loses both parents. He stared at her, jaw working. Finally, he nodded. Okay. Okay, we do it your way. But if anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. She kissed him hard. Go get our daughter. The word "our" hit him visibly. He kissed her back, desperate and fierce. I love you. I love you too. Now go. She waited exactly 5 minutes after they left, then called the police. She explained she was a doctor, that a child had been kidnapped, that she had GPS coordinates. The dispatcher promised units were already being sent. Then Eseosa did something either very brave or very stupid. She got in her car and followed. The warehouse was exactly as grim as she'd imagined. Rusted metal, broken windows, the smell of decay. She parked a block away and crept closer, phone in hand, ready to call for help. Inside, she heard shouting. Gunshots. She pressed herself against the wall, heart hammering. More shots. Then silence. Ji-yeon. Min-wook's voice, raw with fear. Eseosa couldn't wait anymore. She ran inside. The scene was carnage. 5 men down, unconscious or worse. Sang-hoon holding his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. And Min-wook, kneeling in the center of it all, Ji-yeon wrapped in his arms, both of them crying. Appa, Appa, Appa. Ji-yeon was sobbing, the word breaking from her throat over and over, her voice rusty from disuse but real. I've got you, baby. I've got you. Min-wook looked up and saw Eseosa. You called the police. I did. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. They're going to arrest me. Not if you cooperate. Not if you give them everyone above you. Eseosa crossed to them, knelt down. This is your exit, Min-wook. The one you've been looking for. You save yourself by giving them the real monsters. Ji-yeon reached for Eseosa with shaking hands. You came. I knew you would come. Always, baby. Always. Eseosa pulled them both into her arms as police flooded the warehouse. The next 72 hours were a blur. Min-wook was arrested but cooperating. The prosecutor saw value in his testimony, evidence he'd been collecting for months. Sang-hoon took responsibility for the violence at the warehouse, claimed he'd acted alone to save the child. It wasn't true, but it gave Min-wook legal cover. Ji-yeon was examined by doctors, found physically unharmed but traumatized. She wouldn't let go of Eseosa's hand. Child Services wanted to take her temporarily, but Eseosa fought back hard, leveraging her medical credentials and established relationship with the child. After heated negotiations, they agreed to release Ji-yeon to her care with supervision. On the 3rd night, Eseosa brought Ji-yeon to visit Min-wook in holding. The little girl launched herself at her father through the glass, pressing her hands to the barrier. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Min-wook was crying openly. Don't cry, Appa. Ji-yeon's voice was still hoarse but getting stronger. Eseosa says you're going to be okay. That we're all going to be okay. Is that what you say? Min-wook looked at Eseosa through the glass. That's what I know. She pressed her hand to the glass opposite his. The prosecutor called. He's offering full immunity in exchange for your testimony. Witness protection if needed. You walk away clean, Min-wook. Just like we planned. Because you called the police. Because you saved your daughter. Everything else is just paperwork. She smiled, tears streaming down her face. We're going to make it. All 3 of us. Ji-yeon pulled out a folded paper from her pocket, pressed it to the glass. A new drawing. The 3 of them, holding hands. A house with a garden. A small dog. And in the corner, dated 6 months in the future, our family. Min-wook's face crumpled. When did you draw this? This morning. When I knew we were safe. Ji-yeon smiled. My drawings never lie, Appa. If you're still watching, I need you to do something for me. Smash that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? This family's story isn't over. 6 months later, Min Wook's testimony had taken down 12 major players in Seoul's underground gambling network. The prosecutors called it the biggest organized crime bust in a decade. Min Wook's cooperation had earned him complete immunity and a clean slate. No witness protection needed because the organization had been dismantled so thoroughly there was no one left to seek revenge. Sang-hoon had served 3 months before being released on good behavior, immediately hired by Min Wook's new legitimate construction company as head of security. Eseosa stood in their new apartment, smaller than the penthouse but filled with light. It was in a quiet neighborhood in Songdong-gu, near good schools and parks. Ji-yeon had her own room, painted yellow like sunshine, covered in her drawings. The violent ones had been replaced by pictures of flowers, animals, and endless portraits of their little family. What do you think? Min Wook's arms wrapped around her waist from behind. Is it home? It's perfect. She leaned back against him. How was the meeting with the investors? They're in. The construction company is officially launching next month. Sang-hoon found 3 government contracts already. He kissed her neck. We're really doing this. Going legitimate. I'm proud of you. She turned in his arms. Ji-yeon starts her new school tomorrow. She's nervous. She'll be fine. She has you. He tucked a braid behind her ear. We both do. They'd been living together officially for 2 months now. Every morning felt like a small miracle. Waking up next to him, making breakfast while Ji-yeon chatted in Korean and English, walking her to the bus stop together. Normal, domestic, safe. Everything Eseosa had dreamed of but never believed she'd have. There's something I need to ask you, Min Wook said, his voice suddenly serious. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. He pulled back slightly, reached into his pocket. Everything's right. That's the problem. I keep waiting for it to fall apart, but it doesn't. You're still here. Ji-yeon's laughing again. I have a real job. And I realized I don't want to waste another second. He dropped to one knee. Eseosa's breath caught. Min Wook. I know we've only known each other 7 months. I know this is fast. But Ji-yeon drew you before you existed in my life, and when you finally arrived, everything made sense. He opened the small box. The ring was simple, a single diamond on a silver band. Marry me, Eseosa Williams. Not because it's practical or safe, but because I love you more than I thought I could love anyone. Because you saved my daughter and you saved me. Because you're already family and I want to make it official. Tears streamed down her face. Yes. God, yes. He slid the ring on her finger and stood, lifting her off the ground, kissing her like she was oxygen. She wrapped her legs around his waist, hands in his hair, laughing and crying at the same time. I love you, she whispered against his mouth. I love you so much. Appa. Eseosa. Ji-yeon came running in from her room, saw them, and squealed. You asked her. You finally asked her. Min Wook set Eseosa down, grinning. You knew. I drew it last week. Ji-yeon showed them a picture of this exact moment. And I drew the wedding too. It's in May. At the Botanical Garden. With both Korean and Nigerian traditions. How specific, Eseosa laughed, pulling Ji-yeon into a hug. And accurate, because that's exactly what we're doing. They spent the evening planning, Ji-yeon listing everything she'd seen in her drawings while Min Wook and Eseosa exchanged amused glances. Their daughter. That's what Ji-yeon was now. Officially, once the adoption paperwork went through, but really she'd been there since that first impossible night. That week, Mrs. Kong visited for dinner. The older woman had softened considerably over the months, especially after Ji-yeon's kidnapping had shown her how much Eseosa genuinely loved her granddaughter. She brought traditional Korean sweets and embraced Eseosa at the door. Let me see the ring, Mrs. Kong demanded. Eseosa held out her hand. Mrs. Kong inspected it, nodded approvingly. Simple. Elegant. Soo-yeon would have liked it. Thank you, Eseosa said softly. That means a lot. My daughter was many things, but she was never petty. She would have wanted Min-wook to be happy. Mrs. Kang's eyes glistened. And she would have loved you for loving her baby. Over dinner, they discussed wedding plans. Mrs. Kong insisted on handling the Korean ceremony elements. Eseosa's mother was flying in from Benin City for the Nigerian traditions. Dr. Chen had agreed to officiate the legal ceremony. It was coming together beautifully. Have you thought about children? Mrs. Kong asked suddenly. More children, I mean. Eseosa and Min-wook exchanged glances. They discussed it, carefully, late at night. Both wanted more kids eventually, but they'd been focused on stability first. Maybe in a year or two, Min-wook said diplomatically. Ji-yeon looked up from her rice. 1 year. A boy. I already drew him. Everyone froze. What? Eseosa managed. My baby brother. He comes in 1 year and 2 months. I've seen him. Ji-yeon said it so matter-of-factly, like she was discussing the weather. He has Appa's eyes and Eseosa's smile. Mrs. Kong burst into delighted laughter. Min-wook choked on his water. Eseosa felt her face heat. Well then, Mrs. Kong said, eyes twinkling. I suppose we should plan for that too. Later, after Mrs. Kong had left and Ji-yeon was asleep, Min-wook found Eseosa on the balcony, staring at the Seoul skyline. Penny for your thoughts. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. I was just thinking about that night. The elevator malfunction. How if one thing had been different, if I'd noticed the floor number, if your key system had worked properly, none of this would have happened. Fate, Min-wook said simply. You believe in that now? I believe in Ji-yeon's drawings. And I believe some things are meant to be. He pulled her close. You were meant to walk into my life. I was meant to fall in love with you. We were meant to build this. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. They made us appreciate this more. He kissed her temple. No regrets. Not a single one. She turned to face him. Though I might have some regrets if Ji-yeon's prediction comes true and we have a newborn in a year. He laughed. Her drawings never lie. That's what I'm afraid of. But she was smiling, imagining it. A baby. Their baby. Growing their family even more. The wedding came faster than expected. May arrived with cherry blossoms and warm breezes. The botanical garden was transformed into something magical, half Korean traditional elements, half Nigerian celebration. Eseosa wore white for the legal ceremony, then changed into traditional Nigerian attire, vibrant purple and gold, her braids wrapped in geli. Min-wook wore a hanbok for the Korean ceremony, looking so handsome she almost forgot to breathe, then changed into Nigerian agbada that matched her colors. Ji-yeon was flower girl for all 3 ceremonies, glowing with happiness. She'd drawn this day months ago, and watching it unfold exactly as she'd predicted was surreal. Dr. Chen pronounced them married legally. Mrs. Kong oversaw the Korean pie-beak ceremony, where they bowed to elders and shared jujubes and chestnuts. And Eseosa's mother, tears streaming down her face, blessed them in Edo and English, wrapping them in tradition and love. The reception was small, intimate, filled with people who'd watched their impossible love story unfold. Hospital colleagues who'd seen Eseosa transform from a woman running from her past to someone running toward her future. Min-wook's construction team, legitimate businessmen who respected his second chance. Sang-hoon, who'd served time to protect them, now standing as best man with pride in his eyes. When it came time for speeches, Ji-yeon insisted on going first. She stood on a chair, microphone in small hands, and the room fell silent. Her voice was still soft, still recovering from 18 months of silence, but every word rang clear. I knew Eseosa was coming before anyone else did. I drew her because I could see her in my dreams, walking into our lives and making everything bright again. Appa didn't believe me at first. But then she walked through the wrong door, and suddenly everything was right. Ji-yeon smiled at them both. My Eseosa told me once that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's fate. Sometimes it's choice. Eseosa chose us. And I choose her every single day. Welcome to our family, Eseosa. Officially. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Eseosa was openly sobbing. Minwook pulled both his girls into his arms, and the photographer captured it perfectly. That moment of pure, uncomplicated joy. They danced their first dance to a blend of Afrobeats and K-pop, laughing as they tried to merge their completely different rhythms. They cut a cake that was half traditional Korean rice cake, half Nigerian fruit cake. They celebrated until the stars came out, surrounded by love and hope and the promise of tomorrow. On their wedding night, in a hotel suite overlooking the Han River, Minwook traced the wedding ring on Eseosa's finger. Mrs. Park, he whispered. She'd taken his name, a choice that felt right. Mr. Park, she whispered back. My husband. My wife. He kissed her slowly, reverently. My whole world. They made love like it was the first time and the 1000th time all at once, familiar and new, gentle and desperate. Afterward, wrapped in expensive sheets, Eseosa laughed suddenly. What? Minwook asked, stroking her back. I was just thinking. If Ji-yeon's prediction is right, we just made our son. He propped himself up on one elbow, eyes wide. You think? Her drawings never lie. Eseosa grinned. Guess we'll find out in a few weeks. How do you feel about that? Really? Terrified? Excited? Ready? She cupped his face. I'm ready for all of it. Every messy, beautiful part of building a life with you. I love you so much it scares me sometimes, he admitted. Like I'll wake up and this will all be a dream. You'll disappear and I'll be back in that penthouse, alone and angry and destroying myself. That's not going to happen. I'm real. This is real. She kissed him softly. And I'm never leaving. 6 weeks later, Eseosa stood in their bathroom, staring at a positive pregnancy test, laughing and crying at the same time. She heard Minwook's key in the door, heard Ji-yeon's excited chatter about her day at school. She walked out, test in hand. Ji-yeon, she said quietly. Your drawing was right. The little girl's face lit up like sunrise. I'm going to be a big sister. You're going to be a big sister. Ji-yeon launched herself at Eseosa's middle, then stopped, suddenly cautious. Wait, can I hug you? Will it hurt the baby? You can hug me. Eseosa laughed. The baby's the size of a grain of rice right now. Minwook stood frozen in the doorway, briefcase still in hand. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. He crossed the room in 3 strides, swept her into his arms, buried his face in her neck. His shoulders shook. Ji-yeon wrapped her arms around both of them. Their family, growing. The pregnancy was smooth. Eseosa worked until her 8th month, then took leave. Minwook's company was thriving. They moved to a larger house in Gangnam with a garden, the one from Ji-yeon's drawings. They even got the dog, a golden retriever puppy that Ji-yeon named Lucky. Mrs. Kong visited every week, bringing soup and advice and slowly teaching Eseosa all the Korean grandmother wisdom she'd need. Eseosa's mother extended her visa twice, refusing to leave until the baby was born. Ji-yeon prepared for her brother's arrival with the seriousness of a general planning a campaign. She picked out clothes, arranged the nursery, and drew picture after picture of what their family would look like with 4 members instead of 3. When Eseosa went into labor on a Tuesday evening, exactly 1 year and 2 months after the wedding, just as Ji-yeon had predicted, Minwook drove like a man possessed while Ji-yeon sat in the back seat narrating calmly. Don't worry, Appa. We get there in time. I drew it. Everyone's fine. Your drawings better be right about this one, Minwook muttered, running a red light. They were. 8 hours later at 3 a.m., Min-jun Park entered the world screaming, healthy and perfect, with his father's eyes and his mother's smile, exactly as Ji-yeon had drawn. Minwook held his son with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face. He's perfect. God, Eseosa, he's perfect. Just like his sister predicted, Eseosa said tiredly, watching Ji-yeon peer at her brother with fascination. Does he look like my drawing? Ji-yeon asked. Exactly like it. Good. I was worried I got his nose wrong. They all laughed, exhausted and euphoric and complete. 2 years later, Eseosa stood in their garden, watching Minwook teach Ji-yeon, now 12, how to use his old camera. Min-jun toddled around their feet, babbling in a mix of Korean, English, and what might have been Edo. Lucky the dog supervised everything with patient golden retriever wisdom. Dr. Chen had just left after Sunday brunch. Mrs. Kong was inside, teaching Eseosa's mother how to make kimchi, the two grandmothers having formed an unlikely friendship. Sang-hoon's kids were playing soccer with the neighborhood children. It was chaotic and loud and absolutely perfect. Minwook caught her watching, crossed to her, slid his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? That elevator malfunction. 4 years ago tomorrow. The best mechanical failure in history. He kissed her neck. Changed my whole life. Mine too. She leaned back against him. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if it hadn't broken? If I'd gone to the 3rd floor like I was supposed to? I try not to. The alternative is too horrible to imagine. He turned her to face him. But I think somehow, we would have found each other anyway. Maybe not that night. Maybe not that way. But Ji-yeon drew you into existence. Fate would have found a way. You really believe that? I believe in my daughter's gift. I believe in second chances. And I believe some love stories are written in the stars before the people even meet. He kissed her softly. Ours was one of them. Ji-yeon called out from across the yard. Iyama. Appa. Come see. I drew something new. They walked over, Min-jun on Minwook's hip. Ji-yeon showed them her sketchbook. A family portrait, dated 5 years in the future. 5 people instead of 4. Is that? Eseosa started. A little sister. Ji-yeon grinned. Her name is Zara. She has Iyama's eyes this time. Minwook groaned. We just got Min-jun sleeping through the night. Her drawings never lie, honey. Eseosa laughed, already imagining it. Another child. More chaos. More love. I'm getting a vasectomy after this one, Minwook muttered, but he was smiling. That night, after the kids were asleep, they sat on their balcony with wine and watched Seoul's lights twinkle below. 4 years since a broken elevator had brought them together. 4 years of building something beautiful from broken pieces. No regrets. Minwook asked, the same question he'd asked on their engagement night. Not a single one. Eseosa laced her fingers through his. Best wrong turn I ever made. Best home invasion I ever experienced. He pulled her onto his lap. I love you, Mrs. Park. I love you too. She kissed him under the stars. Thank you for letting me stay. Thank you for choosing to. Somewhere inside, Ji-yeon was probably already drawing their future, mapping out the beautiful chaos to come. And whatever she drew, whatever fate had planned, they'd face it together. A family built on prophecy and chance, violence escaped and love chosen, wrong floors and right hearts. Sometimes the universe breaks an elevator just to fix 2 broken people. Sometimes a little girl draws miracles into being. Sometimes you walk through the wrong door and find yourself exactly where you belong. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person you're meant to love is already waiting on floor 38, gun in hand, ready to protect what's his. Ready to let you in. Ready to heal. Before you go, I need one more thing from you. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching this from. New York. Lagos. Seoul. London. Let me know. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because trust me, you don't want to miss the next story. And if this story touched your heart, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to believe in second chances. This is what happens when fate decides to intervene. This is what happens when you trust the journey, even when it starts with the wrong address. Because sometimes, the wrong address is exactly right.